So hi everybody. Um, I want to share with you now what we have learned from the German survey. I will put a focus on the perception of both roles. As you will see, the answers from the German survey are very similar to those from the Spanish ones. So first, participants, 15 persons answered the German survey. Their input have given us important and relevant qualitative information to understand better the situation in Germany. We know about the participants that they live in different German-speaking countries. Most of them live in Germany, 12 of them, one in Austria, one in Switzerland, and one person lives in Hungary. We also know their gender. Most of them are female, 9 of them, 4 male. One person chose other, and one person decided not to answer this question. As for their age, we see one main large group that includes persons between 21 and 30 years old. The second largest group is the group of persons of 40 above 40 years, starting 41 to 60 years old. In between, for that range, 31 to 40, we only had one participant. The fact that the larger group is the group with persons with the younger participants may be the result of the increasing interest that easy to read is becoming or is receiving in the past years. That was similar in other countries. Maybe new graduates see easy to read now as an opportunity, as a job opportunity and a new field. We also asked participants about their knowledge in easy to read principles, in the rules for creating easy to read texts. 10 participants told us that they have learned these easy to read principles or rules in formal training or in non-formal training. Formal training was at university courses and non-formal training was at workshops, most of them held by end users associations. 5 participants told us that they have learned the rules autodidactically by themselves in informal training. They also told us about their jobs. Most of them were facilitators, 2 of them were validators, and 6 of them had other jobs. In this group, we find freelancers, researchers, students, writers, etc. We asked facilitators and validators whether they had undergone specific training for the profession. 2 of them answered and say that they had undergone training workshops offered in a non-formal education setting, where there were workshops offered by end users associations. The number of answers is limited, so we cannot make at this stage a general statement about the question whether facilitators and validators undergo training before they start their profession. The only thing that we can do is make assumptions. We can guess, make an assumption whether there is 2 ways of entering the profession in Germany or in German-speaking countries. One of the ways would be to learn on the job, and the other way would be receiving training beforehand. In order to look into this question, we research in the internet and search for offers of training for validators. In Germany, for instance, there is a solid offer of courses of training for becoming a validator. Most of these training are workshops, and they are organized by end users associations. As you see here, some examples are the courses offered by Netzwerk Leitersprache oder Bundeskompetenzzentrum, Barrierefreiheit, Soziale Schmiede, Lebenshilfe. As you see, a solid offer. When we looked into the training for facilitators, we didn't find actually much. It was, and so we think that if there is an offer, it's less visible than the one for validators. This is actually very interesting for us because it matches one of the problems that we have before we started the survey in German when we were translating the survey. The problem was to find a German name to name the facilitator, to term them. So when we were doing the translations, we said, so how are facilitators called in Germany? And we couldn't find an answer. So what I did is I asked experts working on the field, experts who already also work as facilitators, and we agreed in the end that there is no established term for this professional role in Germany. In the end, we decided to use the term Prüfmoderator, Moderatorinnen, Prüf meaning validation, and Moderator is facilitator, actually. So we cannot answer the question why facilitators are, or this job is less visible. What we can do is take a look at the answers from the survey, and they tell us that facilitators also have other job roles and tasks within their organizations. For instance, all facilitators in our survey, in the German version, said that apart from facilitating tasks, they all do writing. They all produce text, write text in easy to read. 6 of them told us that they also translate and give workshops and lectures and speeches. And 3 of them told us that they review text. 2 of them work as researchers, and 1 of them, oh, I can see it, but I know that person works as an editor as well. So maybe one answer to this question is that the profile of a facilitator is much broader, wider, and belongs to a professional that also has other different tasks. Another thing that we learned from the German answers is a bit about the validation process. This is sort of a snapshot of 3 main points that were underlined. Participants told us that validation is a collaborative process where validators and facilitators work very close together. Whereas the relationship between, or the communication between validators, facilitators, and authors varies. And this depends mostly on the size of the validation group. In Germany, some validations are done in tandem with one validator and one other person, in this case, the writer, who more or less takes over the facilitation group as well, or the facilitation tandem as well. In these cases, the communication between the validator and the writer is very close. Conversely, in the cases where the groups are bigger, 4 or more, this was the option which was we received more mentions. The relationship between the communication between the group and the author or the writer takes place through the facilitator. We also learned that the process is iterative, as is the case in Spain, with several validation rounds, meaning after the first validation, the text goes to the writer or translator or adapter, make the changes, and then the text goes back to the validation group for a final validation. Okay, so now before I finished, I wanted to give you an overview of the skills and abilities that were chosen in the survey or marked as more necessary for the job. According to the answers, I was able to make a short profile, competence profile. As you see, the competence needed go beyond the mere knowledge of the easy to read rules. The interpersonal skills were rated as most important. I'm sorry, I think you cannot see it because you see the, oh, okay, it doesn't matter. And the percentages are on the right-hand side. Interpersonal skills, being able to work in teams was rated as the most important skills, together with personal skills such as reading skills and active listening skills. Validators also should be able to have text-related skills such as understanding multimodality and how, for instance, how pictures and text work together. Of course, knowledge about the guidelines, but also knowledge about the genre. For instance, what makes up an informative text as compared, I don't know, to a poem or to a children's book. Other skills were rated as less important. We're here about in 33% importance, and these were like computer skills or organization skills or knowing about the history of easy to read. Compared to that, the profile of facilitators, as mentioned in the survey, the most important skills were knowledge about end users and personal skills. You cannot see it's about 88%. And knowledge about end users mean knowing about their needs, knowing about the way they read, for examples, and also having knowledge about easy to read, not only about the history of easy to read, but also about, for instance, the legal framework in the country. Personal skills like organizational skills and time management skills, we've seen that in the Spanish survey as well. Of course, text-related skills, multimodality guidelines, very similar to the one before, and specific for facilitators, also procedural skills, such as having communication strategies and of course facilitation strategies and IT skills for communication. I think you cannot see it, but these skills are around 67%. We also asked participants about the workload that a training should have for validators and facilitators. As you see in the case of validators, the suggestion, 40% of them suggested having two different blocks. First, like an initial one and starting a workshop of about 20 to 40 hours, and a second one for more advanced skills with the same duration. As for facilitators, the suggestion was 47% suggested to have one single workshop or one single training with 40 to 60 hours. Lastly, because of their recognition, we asked them if they want their skills and abilities in the training to be recognized. Usually you do that with a certificate at the end. And as you see, most of them agree that they will very likely want to have a certificate after the training. 27% said they were not sure, and some of them didn't feel the need to get a certificate after the training. So just to recap some of the points from the German survey, we have learned that the role and the training for facilitators is less visible in the German-speaking countries as compared to that of validators. We have seen that training is mainly non-formal for facilitators and validators, not for easy to read. So it takes place outside the academia, outside the universities, and mostly by end users associations or institutions working together with end users association. But we also see that there is a lot of informal training taking place by people learning autodidactically using books and text to learn themselves. I think for us, for the next steps in the project, we should take this all information and take a look deeper. We have to find ways of recognizing these non-informal and informal skills and abilities and facilitate or make possible a training that also fits this type of education. I wrote learning outcomes may be a very good way of doing this. This is by describing, by focusing on the competencies of and the abilities that they should acquire, that persons should acquire by the end of the training. Another possibility for us would be to use the European credit system to make this training transferable, because we aim to for this training to be transferable across Europe. And we should also take a look into the prerequisites. That's one thing it's really in my head the whole time is if facilitators, for example, have a wider profile that includes more than just facilitating, so to say. So we have to see what are the prerequisites for entering such a training, not only in the case of facilitators, as I just said, but also for validators, since we have seen that many other competencies are necessary in order to enter such a training. So I think I just say vielen Dank and thank you very much for your attention. I see Daniel already turned on his camera. Daniel, allow me to do this just a second.
Please do.
Thank you. As you know, I am partner in other European projects, ISIT project and Live Text Access. ISIT is about easy to read and training experts in audiovisual translator, let it be audio describers or subtitlers, who want to create audiovisual translations in easy to read. And our event is on the 14th of June. So if you're interested, please register. And similarly, in our project, Live Text Access, this is all about real-time subtitling. We have our last event on the 9th of July, and we will be very happy to have you there. As you know, participation is a great support in all these projects. So now I'm done. Thank you, Daniel.